Welcome, viewers, to another epic journey into the darkest chapters of ancient history. A young, brave queen stands before the golden doors, knowing one step forward could bring a tragic end. Inside sits the most powerful monarch on earth, whose single word can save her people or seal their doom. How did an orphaned Jewish girl become the last hope against a ruthless empire's plot for total ruin? To understand this ultimate gamble of faith and courage, we must step back into the Persian court. The ancient Persian Empire stretched vastly, boasting immense wealth and supreme absolute authority. King Ahasuerus ruled a vast domain, commanding a truly massive royal army. Inside the great city of Susa, the royal palace stood as a towering symbol of immense power. In this glittering court, a dark shadow rose through the cruel and arrogant Vizier Haman. Haman demanded that everyone bow down to him, relishing the deep fear he struck into their hearts. But one man refused to yield. Mordecai, a Jewish exile, remained seated firmly at the gates. His defiance was rooted in his deep faith, refusing to worship a mortal over his God. Enraged by this bold insult, Haman's twisted mind plotted a revenge that went beyond one man. He decided to eradicate the entire Jewish population across the vast empire. Approaching the king with a chest full of silver, Haman whispered poisonous lies into his ear. He claimed there was a dangerous and rebellious group of people whose laws threatened the kingdom's peace. Blinded by his vizier's deceit, King Ahasuerus casually removed his golden ring. He handed ultimate power over to the tyrant, effectively sealing the fate of thousands. The royal scribes hastily drafted the brutal decree, stamping it firmly with the king's deadly seal. According to the ancient laws of the Medes and Persians, a sealed order could never be overturned. Fast couriers mounted swift horses, galloping fiercely to spread the dark message to every province. The cruel text declared that on the 13th day of Adar, all Jewish people would be swiftly vanquished. Men, women, and innocent children were all marked for tragic ruin, and their wealth would be plundered. As the grim decree was posted on the city walls, a wave of profound terror swept through the quarter. People tore their garments in absolute despair, wailing loudly as death's shadow covered their homes. Mordecai stripped off his fine official robes, dressing in rough sackcloth and covering his head with ash. He walked through Susa, crying out with a deeply bitter and agonizing voice that pierced the sky. The lamentation echoed violently, yet the strict palace walls remained indifferent to pain. Inside the lavish harem, Queen Esther lived completely unaware of the approaching tragic doom. When her maids brought her the shocking news of Mordecai's deep mourning, she sent fresh clothes to cover his shame. But the righteous man strictly refused the garments, demonstrating that simple clothes could never fix this. Through a trusted palace messenger, he sent Esther a terrifying copy of the king's new law. The devastating scroll ordered her to go immediately to the king and beg for her people. Esther felt a sudden chill run down her spine as the crushing reality of her position hit. She sent a desperate reply, reminding him of the strict ancient law of the Medes and Persians. Anyone approaching the king unsummoned meets a tragic end by the mighty palace guards. One exception exists to this deadly rule, depending solely on the king's highly unpredictable mood. If the sovereign extends his glowing golden scepter toward the intruder, their life is spared. But the frightened queen had not been summoned to his presence for 30 long and agonizing days. Approaching him now seemed like signing her own tragic fate, stepping willingly into a deadly trap. Mordecai read her reply, entirely rejecting her hesitation during this grand, massive crisis. If you were in her shoes, would you risk your life to save your people? Or stay quiet and survive? Tell us now. He delivered a chilling warning that quickly shattered her fragile illusion of safety in the palace. Do not assume that being the queen will magically protect you from this upcoming total ruin. He declared that silence would not stop her final fate once her Jewish identity was fully revealed. Then came the profound question that echoed through the vast and endless corridors of time and destiny. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a critical time as this? These powerful words struck her heart like lightning, illuminating the true purpose of her existence. She realized her profound beauty and sudden rise were not mere accidents of random daily chance. She was placed firmly in the heart of the enemy's stronghold to bravely save his chosen people. This massive burden of power fell upon her young shoulders, demanding a deeply profound sacrifice. Esther made a firm choice that would forever etch her brave name into the great annals of history. Gather all the Jewish people present in Susa, she ordered, and declare a strict, absolute fast. Do not eat or drink anything for 3 full days and nights, crying out to the Lord for divine mercy. My maids and I will also fast in exactly the same way, joining our desperate prayers with yours. Then she uttered the immortal words that would forever define her true courage and grand legacy. I will approach the king, though it defies the law, and if I must perish, then I shall perish. For 3 agonizing days, the entire Jewish community fought in deep spiritual warfare.
Protect your servants.
They stopped their daily tasks, focusing entirely on seeking divine deliverance from high heaven. Meanwhile, the wicked Haman proudly paraded through the city, drunk on his own terrifying power. He boasted to his wife and friends about his vast wealth, his many sons, and his high rank above the princes. But even with all this glory, his dark soul found absolutely no peace as long as Mordecai lived. Driven by pure, blind hatred, his wife suggested a completely ruthless and horrific idea. Let a wooden gallows be built, 50 cubits high, and simply ask the king to seal his final doom. The evil thought pleased Haman greatly, and he eagerly ordered the towering structure to be built. The sounds of construction echoed loudly, a chilling countdown to an innocent man's tragic end. As the 3rd day dawned, Esther concluded her fasting, her body weak, but her spirit forged in pure steel. She carefully washed her face, smoothing away the visible traces of tears and deep exhaustion. Her maids brought out the most magnificent royal robes, woven with the finest golden threads in the realm. She dressed not out of vanity, but like a fearless warrior wearing heavy armor for a grand battle. Each step toward the inner court felt heavier than stone, echoing loudly in the royal halls. The towering golden doors of the throne room loomed ahead, heavily guarded by the fierce warriors. They gripped their razor-sharp spears tightly, ready to strike down anyone who dared to break the ancient law. Esther paused for a fleeting moment, taking one final and deeply profound breath before pushing on. She stepped gracefully into the light, entirely exposing herself to the blinding court of the king. The king sat on his majestic throne, wearing heavy royal robes that sparkled with countless jewels. The royal hall fell into a fearful silence as all eyes turned swiftly to the uninvited queen. The cruel guards quickly shifted their fighting stances, aiming their sharp weapons directly at her heart. Time seemed to completely freeze as the monarch glared down at the sudden and daring intrusion. This was the ultimate crisis point, where a single breath could mean the final end of a nation. But as his piercing eyes locked onto Esther's brave yet trembling face, something shifted very deeply. The coldness of the tyrant miraculously melted, replaced by a wave of divine favor. God had intervened in the heart of the most powerful ruler, bending his strict will toward mercy. With a slow and deliberate motion, the king lifted his heavy hand, extending the scepter. A collective and silent gasp of absolute relief echoed among the frightened servants. Esther approached the towering throne, gently touching the tip of the scepter to accept her life. "What is your request, Queen Esther?" the king asked. "Even up to half the kingdom, it is yours." Despite the sudden victory, Esther knew that exposing Haman's plot right now was too dangerous. She needed to be highly strategic, separating the king from his manipulative vizier. Instead of a desperate plea, she calmly invited the king and Haman to a private banquet. The king happily agreed, entirely unaware that this feast was a carefully designed trap. Haman left the royal court feeling incredibly proud, believing he was the king's true favorite. But as he exited the gates, he saw Mordecai, who still boldly refused to tremble or bow. This single act of defiance ruined his joyous mood, filling his dark soul with intense, boiling rage. He rushed home, complaining bitterly that his vast wealth meant nothing while Mordecai still lived. Unable to sleep, the restless king ordered the royal records to be read aloud to him that long night. Divine timing was at work. The scribes read how Mordecai had once saved the king from a deadly plot. Since this brave hero had never been rewarded, the king planned to deeply honor him the next morning. Ironically, as dawn broke, Haman entered the court to ask permission to judge that exact man. The stage was perfectly set for the most shocking reversal of power in all ancient history. The king quickly asked his proud vizier how to deeply honor a man who truly pleased him. Thinking only of himself, Haman suggested a truly magnificent and grand royal parade. To his absolute horror, the king commanded him to perform this exact honor for Mordecai. Forced to lead his sworn enemy through the city streets, Haman suffered a crushing and bleak defeat. He rushed back to his grand house in total disgrace, hiding his deeply humiliated face. But before he could even recover, the king's servants arrived to bring him to the queen's feast. As they drank sweet wine, the powerful king asked Esther once again to reveal her request. With incredible courage, she finally spoke the words that would change history forever.
Let my life be granted me.
"If I have found favor in your sight, O king, please spare my life and the lives of my people. For my people and I have been entirely sold to be violently destroyed and vanquished."
We have been sold for destruction.
The sovereign was absolutely stunned, demanding to know who dared to plan such a wicked thing. Esther pointed at the trembling man and declared, "The enemy is this wicked Haman, Pure terror quickly gripped the vizier as he fully realized his massive, deadly mistake. Overcome with intense, boiling fury, the furious king stood up violently and left the grand room. Left completely alone with the queen, Haman fell helplessly to his knees, begging for his dark life. He threw himself desperately upon her couch, just as the raging king fiercely re-entered the hall. "Will he even assault the royal queen here in my own palace?" the angry monarch roared loudly. The heavy word left the king's lips, and the swift guards instantly covered the terrified man's face. A loyal servant stepped forward, pointing out the massive wooden gallows Haman had recently built. "Bring him to face the ultimate judgment upon it," the king commanded, without showing any mercy. So the cruel tyrant met his tragic end on the same deadly structure prepared for his rival. Only after the final punishment was completed did the king's intense anger finally subside. On that truly monumental day, the king gave Esther the entire estate of the wicked Haman. Mordecai then came before the royal throne, for the queen had revealed their close family relationship. The king took off his golden signet ring, which he had reclaimed from the traitor, and gave it to him. But the terrifying decree against the Jewish people was still legally active across the lands. Esther fell at the king's feet again, weeping and begging him to revoke the evil disaster.
And if it please the king,
The monarch extended the golden scepter toward her once more, deeply moved by her sincere tears. However, a document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can never be revoked. Instead, he granted Mordecai the ultimate authority to write a brand new royal decree. The royal scribes were quickly summoned to write down everything exactly as Mordecai commanded. This new edict firmly granted the Jews the vital right to assemble and fiercely protect themselves. Couriers rode out swiftly on the king's fastest horses, urgently delivering the message of hope. Mordecai left the king's glorious presence, wearing magnificent royal garments of blue and white. The entire city of Susa shouted with massive joy, completely celebrating this stunning reversal. For the Jewish people, it was a time of pure happiness, deep gladness, and monumental honor. Many foreigners quickly converted to their ancient faith, terrified of their sudden growing power. When the designated day finally arrived, the enemies hoped to easily crush them forever. Instead, the tables were completely turned, and the Jews firmly overpowered all those who hated them. They fiercely defeated their violent attackers with the sharp sword, completely destroying their foes. The 10 wicked sons of Haman, the great enemy of the Jews, were utterly defeated and silenced. But to show their righteous intent, they absolutely refused to take any plunder or steal any wealth. To honor this massive victory forever, they established the joyous yearly festival of Purim. It stands as a timeless historical reminder that profound courage can overcome the darkest shadows. An orphaned girl embraced her grand destiny, bravely risking everything to save a multitude of lives. Her grand gamble of faith succeeded perfectly, leaving a legendary mark on human history. We have seen how a single voice pierced the royal silence, shifting the immense balance of cosmic power. Esther saved a nation. But how did Mary's brave yes open the profound path to save all of humanity? What was the dark and deep historical context behind her noble choice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey, Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing hidden history.